All right. Thank you to the Bitcoin Policy Institute and especially David Zell for putting on an amazing event. It's been very well organized, and I've really appreciated watching the other speakers as well. I've learned about other aspects of Bitcoin. So first, I want to draw a very light analogy, because it falls apart very quickly, of the three branches of Bitcoin. And I apologize for any formatting errors on the slideshow. That is my own fault. I submitted a PowerPoint. They asked for Google Slides, and I take full responsibility for that. But we've got three branches of Bitcoin, I would argue: nodes, wallets, and miners. But the analogy quickly falls apart because I really believe that nodes are the government of Bitcoin. And it's very unusual because in Bitcoin, we are self-sovereign as nodes. So each node is a piece of software that a user can spin up on their laptop or on a desktop computer that acts much like a web browser would for the internet, but for Bitcoin. It allows you to access and connect to the Bitcoin network directly, download all of the transactional history of Bitcoin, verify everything. And so you are self-sovereign. You get to choose what rules you're going to have on your node. You can go in and modify the source code and compile it and run it. But you have to also be in consensus with all the other nodes. So if you decide to willy-nilly change any rule you want, you might find that others will not be able to transact with you because you're not speaking the same language. So there's a very interesting dichotomy of wanting to be self-sovereign while also needing to cooperate with the rest of the network. And the nodes are where Bitcoin's monetary policy lies. If it was entirely up to the Bitcoin miners, who are the ones receiving the new issuance of Bitcoin, they would certainly vote to give themselves more Bitcoin, right? But the nodes are a check and balance on that. The nodes verify that the miners are not creating more units of BTC than they are supposed to. And what they are supposed to do is follow this issuance schedule here. Now, Bitcoin is 16 years into this wonderful experiment. Already, 95% of the Bitcoin have been added to the ledger. And so for long-term savings, this is crucial to know that you're not going to get diluted out of your Bitcoin from new issuance of the currency. And it's also crucial. Well, let's talk about wallets for a minute here, because wallets, we've talked a lot about self-custody today. They really are critical. So even though I think nodes are the most important, we have to remain respectful towards the wallets that are ultimately what allow you to send and receive value, hold the private keys, and that has grown into a multi-trillion-dollar level of activity on the Bitcoin network. So the way to look at this chart is not that there's in 24 $19.2 trillion worth of Bitcoin commerce, right? This chart is not about buying and selling of goods and services. It's actually just a raw number of how much Bitcoin was unlocked using private keys on the network during that year, and assigning the dollar value to that. And so already Bitcoin is a global sovereign-grade monetary system that grew from $0 of activity in 2009 to $19.2 trillion in 24. The way to look at Bitcoin's usage beyond just payments and transactions is to also look at the long-term savings of how long do people hold Bitcoin for. And so here we see that the average Bitcoin is held for longer than 2 years. And that has grown over the past 16 years of Bitcoin's history. Now, the miners are the ones that are adding the Bitcoin to the ledger. It's turned into a hyper-competitive industry. And as you can see here, it's now more than 25 gigawatts of electricity consumption from 0 in 2009. And all of these properties, all of the branches of Bitcoin result in Bitcoin's value and the transparency, the reliability, and of course, we've talked a lot about the freedom money aspect of it, which has resulted in an astronomical growth in Bitcoin's market cap. Now it's north of $2 trillion as an asset. And one way to look at this, and Andrew Hones earlier pointed out that the growth rate for Bitcoin has really been underemphasized in traditional finance. You can see that it has basically stabilized at a 20 to 50% compounded annual growth rate. Paul Krugman popularized a term called speculative attack, and he pointed out that when you have speculators who can borrow a weak currency to buy a strong currency, they can profit off of the arbitrage, right? If you're borrowing at 5%, and then you're earning 20 to 50% on Bitcoin, that it's just a rational thing people are going to be doing. And from a market perspective, they're only going to be limited by the volatility of Bitcoin, right? They get liquidated from being over-indebted. There are policies that governments can pursue to try to defend their currency against a speculative attack. Right? They can tighten fiscal and monetary conditions with interest rates. They can also impose capital controls and essentially limit access to the banking system, much like Operation Choke Point 2.0. But third, and I think the most important way that they can protect their currency is by acquiring a strategic reserve, right? So we are used to thinking of Forex reserves in the world of international finance, and now we need to be thinking about Bitcoin reserves. And that's how we're going to see Bitcoin go into every single aspect of the financial system, from equity markets to debt markets to governments. If you'd like to do a deep dive into the mining aspect of Bitcoin, I'm going to be going to the Q&A session immediately after this in the Q&A room. So thank you all for your time today, and I hope you found these concepts to be interesting.